It was a Wednesday morning when everything changed. The dealership was buzzing as usual. Phones rang, engines revved, coffee brewed in the break room, routine chaos. I've owned Cascade Auto Haus for nearly a decade, and if there's one thing I thought I'd mastered, it was reading people. Customers walked in with expectations, some hopeful, some desperate, some just passing time. I prided myself on knowing who was who within 30 seconds. But I didn't read him right. Not even close. I first noticed the man standing near the entrance around 9:42 a.m. I remember the time because I had just finished a heated phone call with a supplier about a botched delivery. I was irritated, distracted. When I looked up, I saw a man, mid-30s, dressed in a navy windbreaker and faded jeans, just standing there, not browsing, not asking questions, just looking. "Anyone helping him?" I asked, nodding toward the entrance. No one responded. Jenna, our receptionist, was busy on the phone. Marcus, my top salesman, was glued to his tablet. "He's been there a while," Marcus finally said without looking up. "Probably just browsing." I frowned. Something about that didn't sit right. I approached him casually, plastering on my default smile. "Hey there, welcome to Cascade Auto Haus. Looking for anything in particular?" He looked at me, his expression neutral. Then he made a quick series of gestures with his hands I now realize had been trying to communicate all along. At the time, I just blinked. I had no idea what he was saying. There was a brief, awkward silence. I glanced around. No one else had moved to help. The man gave a small wave, maybe a thank you, maybe a goodbye, and turned toward the lot. That should have been the end of it. But something pulled at me. I watched him move toward the used cars, pausing in front of a certified pre-owned Subaru. He walked around it slowly, inspecting every inch, then pulled out a notebook and started writing something down. Still alone. Still no help. I walked back to the front desk. "Jenna, did he say anything when he came in?" She shook her head. "No, he didn't speak at all." That's when it hit me. "He's deaf," I said quietly. Jenna blinked. "Oh, I didn't realize." Neither did I. And that was the problem. The guilt settled in quickly. I couldn't shake the image of him trying to communicate, signing, pointing, watching our eyes glaze over as we failed to understand. Worse, we didn't even try. By 10:30 a.m., he was gone. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept thinking, how many times had someone like him walked into places like mine and left feeling invisible? What did that say about us? About me? Momatayam times. The next day, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this be one of those things that gets chalked up as a misunderstanding and forgotten. I started with something small. I printed a sign for the front desk. "If you are deaf or hard of hearing, we are here to help. Please point to this sign, and we will bring someone trained in basic sign communication." Problem was, we didn't have anyone trained in any sign communication. That's when I remembered Ellie. Ellie was a service technician who had joined us just 4 months ago, quiet, observant, the type who rarely joined the post-shift banter. But I remembered her resume mentioned something about volunteer work with the deaf community. I found her in the service bay, elbows deep in the engine of a Civic. "Ellie," I said, "can I ask you something weird?" She looked up, surprised. "Sure. Do you know sign language?" She hesitated. "Yeah, I do. My younger brother is deaf." And just like that, the wheels started turning. That Friday, around 3:15 p.m., the man came back. This time, I was ready. "Ellie," I said into my radio. "Front desk, now." I met him with a smile and motioned for him to wait. He watched me with that same calm, unreadable expression. 30 seconds later, Ellie stepped up beside me, and then the magic happened. They started signing. Fluid, fast, precise. I didn't understand a word, but I understood the moment. His shoulders relaxed, his eyes lit up, his hands moved faster, more expressively. For the first time since stepping through our doors, he was being seen. Ellie nodded, then turned to me. "He's been looking at the Subaru Outback. Says he read online that you have one with adaptive cruise control and low mileage." I smiled. "Tell him it's still available and it's a damn good deal." She signed back. He laughed. Actually laughed. It was the first twist of the day, but it wasn't the last. He came back the next morning. I didn't expect it. especially not this soon. But there he was, standing in front of the dealership entrance again, this time holding a slim, brown leather folder and a tablet under one arm. Ellie had just clocked in when I called her over. "Round two?" she said with a grin. "Let's see what he has for us today." The three of us sat in my office, a strange but peaceful triangle of silence and motion, me observing, Ellie translating, the man signing with an intensity that was both graceful and commanding. He introduced himself, Caleb Myers. He was, as it turned out, an engineer. But not just any engineer. Caleb worked with a small but highly specialized tech firm that developed accessibility tools for the deaf and hard of hearing, augmented reality glasses, intelligent captioning systems, even automotive tech designed to interpret audio cues into haptic feedback. I leaned forward, stunned. "You work in accessibility tech for cars?" Ellie translated. Caleb smiled and nodded. Then he reached into his folder and pulled out a sketch, hand-drawn diagrams of a car interior, showing vibrating pads on the seat, LED notifications on the dash, directional light cues along the windshield. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a casual buyer. This man had come to observe us, to test us. I looked at Ellie. "Did he say why he came here first?" She nodded slowly after translating. "He said your dealership had good reviews for integrity and inclusiveness. He wanted to see if that reputation extended to his experience." I swallowed hard. "So we failed." Caleb shook his head. Ellie watched his hands, then translated carefully. "Not failed, revealed. That's better. I didn't know how to respond to that." That night I did something I hadn't done in a while. I sat in the dark corner of my office and thought about who I was when I opened Cascade Auto House. Back then I cared more about people than profits. I used to leave business cards with handwritten notes on windshields. I once helped a single mother with no credit drive off in a car she paid $20 a week for, just because she promised she'd make it right, and she did. But somewhere along the line we became efficient, professional, focused, and somehow cold. Caleb had held up a mirror I hadn't expected, and I didn't like the reflection. The following Monday, I gathered the team. Everyone. Sales, service, admin, even the janitorial crew. I told them about Caleb, about what he experienced when he first walked in, about what he does, who he is, and what we almost missed. The room was quiet. A few jaws clenched. Some lowered their eyes. Then I said, "We're changing. Today." I introduced a new initiative, Project Open Door. Every employee would get basic sign language training. Starting that week, we would install visible signage welcoming deaf and hard of hearing customers. We would build accessibility into everything, test drives, paperwork, service calls. And if anyone didn't like it, they were free to find work elsewhere. No one left. A week later, Caleb returned with a silent nod of approval and a surprise. He wanted to partner with us. His firm was developing a pilot program that outfitted cars with an accessibility suite designed for deaf drivers. They needed one dealership to run a 6-month trial, gather user feedback, and help improve the design. He chose us. And he didn't want money. He wanted trust. Ellie was the natural choice to lead the project. She worked closely with Caleb's team, translating not just language, but intent, helping us bridge a world we'd barely understood before. Her confidence grew. So did her voice. She became a kind of heartbeat for the dealership, quiet but strong. But then, the twist I didn't see coming hit us like a brick through the showroom window. 3 weeks into the pilot program, someone broke into the service bay. Nothing was stolen. But Caleb's prototype unit, installed into one of the test vehicles, was ripped out. Wires slashed. Memory chip destroyed. We were stunned. Ellie cried when she saw the wreckage. "I just don't understand," she whispered. "Why this?" I had no answers. But something about it felt personal. We checked the security footage. Grainy. Unhelpful. The cameras in the service bay hadn't been working for 2 days. A maintenance request had been filed, but no one followed up. It couldn't be a coincidence. And just like that, the air at Cascade turned cold again. I called Caleb to tell him. He arrived an hour later, calm as always, but there was something different in his eyes. He sat across from me in the office. Ellie signed his words. He says, "It's happened before. Other places. Usually quiet sabotage. Sometimes worse. Most don't want accessibility until it affects them." He paused. then added something else. But this time, I want to fight back, if you're willing. I met his gaze, heart pounding. We're not just willing, I said. We're in. It didn't take long before the whispers began. I overheard Marcus in the break room, muttering to Jenna. This whole deaf initiative is costing us time and customers. We're a dealership, not a social program. Normally, I would have called a meeting and shut it down fast. But something told me to wait, to watch. The vandalism wasn't random. It felt like someone trying to send a message, not from the outside, but from within. We were being sabotaged from inside Cascade Auto House. And the deeper I looked, the more cracks I found. Ellie started receiving anonymous messages in her locker. Printed pages, no handwriting, just typed out words in bold black font. We sell cars, not causes. Some of us actually have to work. Stop wasting our time. It was quiet, deliberate intimidation. And it worked. Ellie withdrew, her usually warm energy flickering to something dim and uncertain. I tried to reassure her. They're cowards, I told her. Whoever's doing this, they don't want progress. They want comfort, familiarity. Ellie looked up at me with tired eyes. And what if they win? They won't, I promised. But I wasn't as sure as I sounded. Caleb, for his part, stayed remarkably composed. He never got angry, never lashed out. When I asked him how he stayed so calm, he signed something that stuck with me. Anger is loud, but change is patient, and patience lasts longer. Still, the tension was rising. Staff morale split down the middle. Some embraced the change. Others rolled their eyes during sign language sessions and mocked the new signage when they thought no one was watching. Then, one morning, something happened that changed everything. It was a Tuesday. Cloudy. Quiet. An elderly woman walked in with her grandson, who couldn't have been more than 6 years old. He was bright-eyed, wearing a blue backpack shaped like a dinosaur, and he clung to her leg like the floor was lava. Jenna greeted them. The woman smiled. We're just looking around, but my grandson is deaf. I'm learning to sign, but I'm not very good yet. Is that okay? Jenna lit up. We actually have someone who can help. Just give me a second. Ellie came out and crouched in front of the boy. She signed slowly, playfully, exaggerating her gestures. The boy's eyes widened, then lit up like the sun. He signed back excitedly. They started a game. Guess the car, using signs. The boy squealed with laughter every time he got one right. The entire front showroom stopped to watch, including Marcus. And for the first time, I saw something shift in his expression. Not resentment, not dismissal. Curiosity. Later that day, Marcus came to my office. He didn't knock. Just stepped in like he always did, confident and uninvited. I was out of line, he said. I looked up, surprised. About what? About Ellie. About this whole thing. He leaned against the doorframe. I have a cousin. He's autistic. When he was a kid, people treated him like furniture, just stepped around him like he didn't exist. He rubbed his jaw. Watching Ellie with that kid today. I don't know. It just hit me. That was the second time in 2 days I watched someone's walls crumble. Then came the biggest twist yet. On Friday, I called an emergency meeting. Everyone was there, including Caleb and his business partner, a no-nonsense woman named Regina, who communicated fluently in both ASL and spoken English. She stepped forward and announced, "We're not just piloting this technology anymore. We're building a new training and outreach model. Cascade Auto House will be our flagship." You could have heard a pin drop. And then she added, "We'll be publicly announcing this partnership with media coverage." That's when the faces changed, eyes widened. Phones were suddenly pulled out, thumbs flying. And that's when I saw fear flicker across one face in particular. Brian. A longtime technician. Quiet, average, forgettable, until now. His fingers tapped nervously against the metal chair. His eyes avoided mine. And when the meeting ended, he didn't clap like the rest. He just left. That night, Ellie called me. "Something's off," she said. "What do you mean?" "My tablet. It's missing." I frowned. You sure? Yeah, I left it on my desk after our meeting. But when I came back, it was gone. I locked the screen, but it has all our notes, videos, diagrams, customer feedback. My chest tightened. Do you think someone's trying to leak it? Ellie paused. I think someone's trying to kill it. The next morning, I arrived early. Earlier than usual. And I wasn't alone. Caleb was already there, silent, focused, a legal notepad in his hands. We walked the floor, then the service bay. Then we found what we were looking for. Ellie's tablet, wedged behind a stack of tires. Someone had tried to wipe it clean. But Caleb? He was smarter than that. He had backed everything up to a cloud drive 2 weeks ago. Just in case. That afternoon, I called Brian into my office. He came in with his arms folded, face already defensive. You know why you're here, I said. No idea, he replied flatly. Security logs show your ID used the back service entrance at 11:53 p.m. last week. He froze. That doesn't mean anything. It does when we compare it with motion sensor logs. You were in the bay when Caleb's prototype was damaged. He opened his mouth. Then closed it. Silence. Finally, he muttered, this whole thing, it's just performative. We're pretending to care for clicks and headlines. I shook my head. You think Caleb's life is a performance? That Ellie's family is a gimmick? He didn't answer. I leaned forward. You're fired. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. But even then, I knew it wasn't over. Because this wasn't about one bitter employee. This was about the cost of changing the culture and how much resistance comes from the fear of being left behind. After Brian was let go, the air in the dealership felt different, but not quieter. It was charged. Some employees were relieved. Others kept their heads down, unsure which side of history they wanted to be on. And a few? They still resented every second spent learning signs or attending Caleb's training sessions. But here's the thing about change. Once you see the cracks in the system, you can't unsee them. And once you do, the silence starts to feel like complicity. So we leaned into the noise. Ellie took charge of implementing a new internal protocol, silent sales. Once a week, we'd hold a half day where employees weren't allowed to use spoken language in the showroom. Everything, greetings, questions, pitches, had to be communicated via gestures, text, or sign. The first session was chaos. Marcus accidentally sold a car to someone who just wanted a brochure. Jenna wrote an entire price breakdown on a whiteboard, only to realize the customer had already left. And one of the newer sales guys, Aaron, got so frustrated trying to explain APR rates through hand signals that he nearly cried. But by week 3, they started adapting. Jenna learned how to fingerspell. Aaron created a printed cheat sheet of key phrases. Marcus, always the skeptic, began watching Ellie and mimicking her signs with a quiet admiration he didn't even try to hide. And customers noticed. We started getting emails, reviews, even handwritten notes. One from a deaf couple read, "We've never felt so welcomed. It's not just the signing, it's the effort, the humanity. Thank you." I printed it out and taped it above the receptionist's desk. By month's end, our foot traffic had doubled. And not just from the deaf community, but from anyone who felt overlooked or underestimated elsewhere. Then came the award nomination. Regina sent me a message at 7:32 a.m. on a Sunday. I was halfway through pancakes with my daughter when my phone buzzed. Congrats! You've been shortlisted for the National Inclusive Business Award. They want a site visit next week. Media coverage pending. I stared at the screen, stunned. My 8-year-old leaned over and said, "You look like you saw a ghost." I felt like I had, not because I didn't believe we'd come this far, but because now the world would see it. And when the world sees you, so do your enemies. On the day of the visit, everything was perfect. Too perfect. The showroom gleamed. The training room was set up with digital displays of Caleb's tech. Ellie wore a sleek navy suit and signed a welcome speech in front of the entire staff. Caleb stood beside her, his presence quiet but commanding. And I tried to smile, even though something in my gut kept twisting. We made it through the tour, the presentation, even the interview with a national reporter. But then, just as the final handshake was happening, a voice called out from the crowd, "Tell them the truth." Everyone turned. It was Brian. I felt the blood drain from my face. He stood just outside the glass doors, holding up his phone. "They won't tell you this," he said, loudly enough for the cameras. "This is a publicity stunt. They don't care about deaf people. They just want good press." Security started moving toward him, but he kept speaking. They're faking this whole thing. The break-in? Staged. That prototype? Doesn't even work. Ask them. Ask him." He pointed directly at Caleb. "Let's see him respond without his translator." I stepped forward. "That's enough, Brian. Leave now." But he ignored me. Instead, he looked at Caleb and made a cruel, mocking gesture. An exaggerated fake version of sign language, flailing and smirking. The crowd gasped. Then, without missing a beat, Caleb stepped forward, and he spoke, out loud, clear, measured, confident. "I can speak," he said, his voice slightly uneven but firm. "I choose not to because I shouldn't have to change who I am to be understood." The room went silent. Even Brian froze. Caleb turned to the cameras. "And for the record," he added, "the prototype works. But even if it didn't, the real invention is this. A place where people like me are seen. Where we are heard, even in silence." The media ate it up. Within 24 hours, our dealership was trending online. But more than the fame, something deeper happened. Marcus walked up to Caleb later that evening and signed, slowly, "I'm sorry." Ellie cried when she saw it. So did I. But the final twist? That came days later, when Regina showed up with an envelope. Inside was a grant, a massive one, $250,000 to expand our program across 3 more dealerships. She handed it to me, smiling. "You ready to build something bigger?" I looked around at the team, at Ellie, beaming with pride, at Caleb, surrounded by customers learning to sign, at the showroom, now filled with accessibility kiosks and directional light cues, and I said we already did. I didn't plan to be the face of an inclusion revolution. I just wanted to sell cars and go home to my kid. But life has a funny way of dragging you into purpose when you least expect it. And once you see the gap, the injustice, the need, you either step up or step away. I chose to step up. 2 weeks after receiving the grant, Regina and Caleb brought in a camera crew. "We're documenting the pilot for a short film," she explained. "Not just about the tech, but about the people. The mindset shift, the resistance, the change." At first, I didn't want to be on camera. But Ellie told me, "If you don't tell the story, someone else will, and they might not tell it right." So I did. We told the truth. The awkward beginning. The failures. The ignorance. The sabotage. And then the kindness. The growth. The real change. The film's title? Heard Without Sound. It debuted online with a modest launch. Within 3 days, it had 2 million views. The ripple effects were bigger than we imagined. Emails poured in from other dealerships, schools, even government offices. "We want to start our own version of your program. Where can we get training?" I didn't realize how much we excluded deaf customers until I saw this. But what struck me most were the personal messages. One came from a woman in Arizona. "My father is deaf. He's 72 and has never bought a car on his own because he's always been afraid of being ignored or cheated. After watching your video, he cried. And yesterday, for the first time, he walked into a dealership and bought his first truck. Thank you." Another from a teenager in Illinois. "I'm deaf. I didn't think I'd ever work in sales because no one like me ever does. Your video gave me hope. I'm learning how to become a service advisor now." Ellie printed everyone and put them on the wall in the staff lounge. We called it the Wall of Change. Every time someone doubted the work, or got tired of it, they'd walk past that wall and remember why we started. But it wasn't just us that changed. Caleb changed too. For years he had built tools for people like him, yet had kept himself behind the curtain. Now he was front and center, speaking at conferences, meeting with manufacturers, building bridges that had never existed. One afternoon he sat in my office after a long meeting and signed something I didn't quite expect. "You were the first one who didn't look away." I smiled. "Only because you didn't let me." He grinned. Then one afternoon, Ellie called me to the delivery bay. There, sitting proudly in the sunlight, was the Subaru Outback Caleb had first looked at when this whole thing began. Now fully fitted with his firm's accessibility tech, seat vibration alerts, LED directional prompts, and a sleek HUD interface. It was beautiful. "This one's his," Ellie said. I blinked. "You're serious?" Caleb walked in at that moment, holding a small key fob. Ellie handed him the title documents. He signed them and handed over a check, full price. I raised an eyebrow. "You of all people could have gotten a discount." He shook his head and signed with a smile. "You don't discount dignity." Later that week he took the car on its first real drive. I watched him pull out of the lot, sunlight hitting the roof, the tech softly glowing through the tinted windshield. And in that moment, I realized something. This hadn't just been about one customer. It was about every person who'd ever walked into a place meant to serve them and left feeling invisible. It was about making sure that never happened again. Now, every new hire at Cascade Auto House goes through accessibility training before they learn how to log into our CRM system. Every car delivery comes with a personalized experience checklist, whether the buyer can hear or not. And Ellie? She's our new Director of Inclusive Customer Experience. She's building training modules to roll out nationwide. Marcus works under her now. And guess what? He's not bitter. In fact, he's the one who lobbied for more budget for her department last month. Sometimes customers still come in who don't know our story. They look around at the signs, the interpreters, the kiosks with touch-to-sign options and ask, "Why all this?" I always smile and tell them the truth. Because one man walked in and refused to be invisible, and because one act of kindness, just one, can flip an entire system on its head. 6 months later, I stood at the back of a crowded room in Washington, D.C., National Automotive Conference. Thousands in attendance, flashing lights, suits, corporate slideshows. Cascade Auto House had been nominated for a National Innovation Award. I never thought a car dealership, my car dealership, would end up on a stage usually reserved for billion-dollar companies. But here we were. They called my name. I walked up with Ellie beside me. Caleb followed, quiet but poised, wearing a navy jacket with his company's small silver logo pinned to the lapel. They handed us the award, a sleek glass trophy engraved with a single word: Access. During the short acceptance speech, I didn't say anything profound. No slogans, no buzzwords, just the truth. 6 months ago, a man walked into our dealership, and none of us knew how to talk to him. Today, we don't just talk. We listen, we learn, and we build with intention. Accessibility isn't charity. It's not a campaign. It's a standard. And if your business isn't thinking about that, then your business is already behind. Then I stepped aside. Ellie said something in sign. Caleb stood next to her and repeated it aloud. Inclusion doesn't need applause. It just needs commitment. The room stood. And for once, it wasn't just a standing ovation. It was a moment of reverence. Back at the dealership the following week, I sat in my office and opened an envelope from Caleb. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. You've helped give voice to a group that was always speaking, but rarely heard. Never forget the power of a single act done with sincerity. Never forget what silence reveals. You changed this place, and this place will change others. Tucked behind the letter was a photograph. A candid shot from one of the early training days. Me, awkwardly trying to sign thank you, while Ellie laughed and corrected my form. Caleb was in the background, smiling faintly. I framed it. Put it on my wall. Because that wasn't just a picture. It was proof. Over time, the dealership evolved again. More customers came in expecting the experience we had become known for. We trained other dealerships, launched new partnerships, and then one day Caleb sent me a message saying he was moving. Back to Portland, he said, to open a dedicated mobility lab. But Cascade will always be where it began. Ellie and I threw him a surprise farewell party. Everyone signed a goodbye message on a giant whiteboard, which we rolled into the delivery bay like a tribute. Before he left, he gave me a small gift. A steering wheel cover, stitched with LED threads. It lit up in subtle patterns when you activated the turn signal, brake, or even the horn, designed for deaf drivers to feel what others could hear. It was elegant, quiet, game-changing. Much like Caleb himself. Months passed. The world moved forward. New faces joined the dealership. Some had hearing loss. Some had physical limitations. Some had none. But all of them had stories. And every single one was heard. Because now, we had built a space that demanded it. A space where no one had to raise their voice to be seen. A space where kindness wasn't policy. It was culture. Sometimes, people ask me what the hardest part was. Not the vandalism. Not the backlash. Not even firing someone I once trusted. The hardest part? Admitting I didn't see the problem, until I became part of it. That's what privilege does. It dulls your awareness. Numbs your empathy. Lets you assume that silence means satisfaction instead of suppression. But I learned. We all did. And we're still learning. Every day, someone walks into Cascade Auto House expecting just another sales pitch and walks out having felt something different. Humanity, intention, respect. And none of it would have happened if not for one man who refused to be ignored. One brave, deaf customer. One kind act that changed everything. Sometimes, it takes just one moment, one choice, to spark a ripple that changes lives. If this story moved you, imagine what the next one might do. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that challenge, inspire, and remind us of what truly matters.